Oh, hello. We're live to Twitch.
Up to
How's it going,
Twitch.
everyone? It's me, Holmes, and it's Bootza. We're here. First time on stream together, I think. Like we've done content before, obviously, but it was all pre-recorded, like podcasts, and like I think we did a tournament review like quite a while ago as well. So first time live together, the two LSA co-founder boys. How's it going, Bootza?
Good, man. So good to be on here with you, mate. I've been looking forward to this experience to jump on with you. Just an intimate crowd tonight. Just the two of us.
Hey, yeah, that's cool. Young whippersnapper, me
chatting.
teaching the old timer how to use the bloody new Twitch technology streaming. Huh?
Hey, mate, I'm here to learn. We're all here to learn. So I'm hoping to learn a few things about the the team stuff that we're here to talk about as well tonight.
Yeah, cool. So, obviously, while we're talking, chat if anyone's in there, and they can let us know how the audio levels are, whether I'm too loud or quiet, or Butz is too loud or quiet. We are aware there's like 1 million crickets around where our Butzer is at the moment, so you'll probably hear them coming in and out of a volume, but there's only so much we can do about that at the moment. We'll look into making that not an issue in the future. But while we wait for some people to file in and see how the audio levels are, today is the second podcast that we're streaming instead. The reason that we're streaming these podcasts is like now that we're affiliated and people can subscribe, it was like, well, if people are subscribing, they want some regular content on the stream. And so the podcast is just kind of a format that we can do. So that's why we've started streaming these podcasts. But today's topic, we're talking about getting the most out of your team. More specifically, I guess your team for teams that have built for like competing, like tournaments and stuff. Though I guess some of this will also just apply to a league team as well. Kind of the reason we're discussing this is I just happen to have been talking to a lot of people about it recently, and it was on my mind. So I was like, well, I think I have some knowledge to drop, and I'm sure Butzer does as well. Been in the scene for a while, been on, one or two pretty successful teams. So we figured why not share some of that information with the community. How does that sound, Butzer? Does that sound good?
Sounds good. And actually, funny thing, when you mentioned it as a topic, the very, very first blog post I ever wrote for Laser Sports Academy was actually on team formation back in like 2017. And the whole project went on ice for a little while. But when you brought it up, I'm like, yes, I can like dust off the very first piece of content I ever made and actually make use of it. So here we are.
I remember reading it back in the day. I don't know how I got my hands on it, but I remember maybe you sent it around like kind of privately or something to a few people, but I remember reading it, and yeah, it was it's good. Like you made like if I remember correctly, it was like a document, and it kind of like takes you through like all the things that you should be considering like before you build your team, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It was just like a basic sort of rundown of all the things that I would consider if forming a new team. And I did. I shared it around to a few key players at the time just to get their feedback on it. And then life got in the way and we deviated, and now we're back again, full 360, talking about the same topic. And funnily enough, all the points on it were still relevant today. So I think it's kind of like a timeless chat, this one, really. I think you can always add to your understanding and knowledge of how to manage your team, how do you form your team, how to manage team chats, between games, prior to tournaments. You can always add strings to your bow, but there are a few fundamentals I think that are really, really key.
Yeah. Well, apparently the audio levels are okay, and all of that. So I think we can just get right into it. So we're gonna talk about this kind of in we're just gonna be flapping gums at each other, but we're gonna try and talk about it in an order that kind of makes sense. So we're gonna start off by talking about, as Butzer was just saying, the actual formation of your team and the kinds of things that you would want to consider. If you want to have like a successful team, but also two, more importantly, I think like a team you're actually going to enjoy the experience with. So do you want to explain that one first for us, Bootza, since you do already have that done. You already made a thing for it, and you finally get to release it out to the people.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll just start blabbing about particular parts of it. And I think the starting point, which is the obvious one, is having aligned goals with the people that you invite into your team. And the classic, what I've noticed has happened in Zeltac since the beginning is that the percentage of players that used to visit for social purposes, just to have a good time and play a bit of laser tag, was maybe 50% of that, and 50% of people who were highly competitive. Obviously got people who are kind of in the middle, kind of 50% competitive, 50% social. And what's happened is that things have kind of shifted, where it's probably a vast more majority of people now go for competitive reasons. And people go for different reasons. I think it's really important that when you're establishing a team, that you're on the same page with the people that you want to invite into that team, that you're going for the same reasons. Because I'm not sure if you ever played on a team where, like, you're a very competitive guy. Have you ever played on a team where you've got players that are like not really as competitive as you and like don't really like having the serious team talks and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I have definitely before. I won't name names or point fingers, but no, it is definitely, as like Bootza said, like I am one of the players that do take it very seriously, and I'm there to achieve the best result I can. And playing on a team with people where like that objective isn't like aligned, and they're just kind of they're not engaged in team chats. When you ask them like, oh, what's like something that you think you could work on after like the last game, because we had a really rough one, they're like, oh, I don't know. It's like, well, there has to be something. It can be super frustrating, and it just leads to like a buildup of resentment, I think, between the competitive person like wanting the other person to be competitive, and the non-competitive person being like, I don't get what the big deal is, like just chill, we're here to have fun. And I don't think either person is necessarily in the wrong. I think it's, as you said, it's just a case of like two people whose objectives don't align. And I think a big part of where like that anger and that resentment comes from is when if you have an expectation and that expectation isn't met, and that's where like anger and resentment comes from. So you need to make a point of like everyone's expectations of what we're trying to get out of this experience is aligned. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with people like at each other's throats, not wanting to talk to each other. And then that kind of stuff, even if you have like 5 of the best players in the world, if none of them want to play with each other, then, or even if half of them don't want to play with the other half, like you're going to have a pretty disjointed team that's not going to really synergize well. So yeah, and that's been my experience in the past for sure.
Yeah, and like all these like pointers that we bring up as part of this team formation section, it's all about putting thought or having conversations about things that will direct you away from having that experience during the comp. It's like there's a whole bunch of boxes you can tick to like ensure you're going to have a good time at comp, like almost ensure you're going to have a great time at the comp. Obviously, there's things that can happen at the comp that can throw you off, but you can clear a lot of things out of the way by like just putting a little bit of thought and having some conversations with people, like honest conversations with people before you jump in and commit to a team. It's actually a massive commitment when you think about it. Like often people are spending a lot of money to go. They've got to commit to training, particularly in Zeltac now. People who are competing, even in the middle of the ladder, need to be committing themselves to train regularly in order to like do the best for their team. So there's a lot at stake, I guess. So having these conversations is a good way to make sure everything goes to plan.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so I guess the next thing on the list was just having to think about the kind of characters that you want to, or the kind of character traits that you want to attract onto your team. So, like, do you, like when you play league with people and when you play competitions with people, you get to see, well, I believe when you see people drinking alcohol and playing competitive sport, it brings out the best and the worst in them. So when you see people playing at locally at a high level, you can see insights into their character essentially, and you've got to have a good think about what kind of players that you want to have on your team. Do you want to have people who are, even like attributes as well? Do you want to have people who are highly flexible on your team? Do you want a lot of fast players? Do you want does a player bring a uniqueness? You know, I remember when Spider first came on the scene, he was very fresh in his first year. And I said to everybody around, I said, if I was to pick a world's team for Australia right now, I'd pick Spider. He might not be, this was, you know, 2019, so this is a long time ago. He might not be the best player yet, but he has got the most unique body configuration I've ever seen in our sport in this country, and I'll put him on the team because he'll be able to do something completely different to everybody else. So sometimes it's not even about skill, it's about a uniqueness that people bring. Everybody wants a lefty on their team, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants somebody who's dependable and is going to like just put out the same, you know, effort every time. So having a good think about the attributes that you know, you want to have on your team before you go and start having conversations as well is a good one.
Yeah, and I think character's a really big part of it, because obviously, you know, if you, let's say you're trying to build a competitive team, a team that's going to make it into the top 10, top 5 or whatever your goal is, choosing the 5 best mechanical players might not actually be a recipe for success. In fact, I would think that oftentimes it's actually not. I think more important than choosing just like the 5 best mechanical players is, choosing 5 people who's like, they have a temperament and a character that really like aligns with how you want to present your team. So I know, when did we make Aftershock? We made Aftershock. I mean, at least when made Aftershock. Aftershock was made like in 2017, the lead up to Albury, and that was just like a development rookie team thing. But it's really had like a rebirth, I guess, in the lead up to 2020 Darwin Nuts. And so I think it was just Mikey and I at the time. No one else was on the team. And we sat down and we had to think of like, who are the players that we're going to ask to try like to join us, right? And the big thing that came up time and time again was like, what's more important than anything to us is like people that we just enjoy spending time with, people who are going to represent like the team and like our state well. You know, we want to be known as a team that's like dependable and like, you know, you can go up and have a chat with them, whatever it is, you know. So just nice people, I guess. People that are coachable. So people that we found in the community, like if we were like, hey, you know, you did this in this game, and maybe next time you could try and do something like this, and they go like, oh yeah, cool, thanks. And maybe not the person that you tell them that, and then they just make it like a list of 20 excuses as to why they made that mistake rather than addressing it, you know? So yeah, I think building your team, even if you're wanting to build the most competitive team you can, I think obviously you need people with strong mechanical skills, but I think more important than that is just finding like those character traits that you want, and coachability, and you know what's the word? What's the word? Like owning up to your mistakes. What's that word?
Yeah, just taking responsibility. Yeah, that's a huge one.
Responsibility. Isn't it? Yeah. Responsibility is massive. But no, 100% character is super, super important.
Yeah, no, I think I can speak for most people when you've got that player on your team that like every time something goes wrong in a game, it's the base or it's the player or it's the ref or it's something outside of what they've done. It's kind of disempowering. Like it's like, okay, well, does it send the team forward? So that one's definitely a big one we look for particularly. And I guess my example of what you just explained with Aftershock was probably 08, 09. 09. It was probably 08, 09, 2010 when we started forming the Maroons. Because when I first got to Queensland, I sort of acquired a community, and the community was like had one figurehead that was very dominant, and everybody else was kind of like followers. And that figurehead kind of, I rocked up. I was the new site operator in town, and I introduced a whole bunch of things like, you know, handicapping at league and things like this that they didn't like, to try and encourage more new players in. So I lost a lot of the first batch, particularly the leadership group. So what I acquired was like a bunch of like Oh, they were great guys, but we didn't have a think tank. And I'd go to nationals and I'd play the West Australian National Knights, or That's Amazing, or Hobart, or some of those teams back in the day. And they would have 4 or 5 players sitting around a map, all discussing actively what was going on in the arena. And it would be on my team, it was me and one other guy, and then 4 guys sitting over there, like, lighting up their farts essentially, and like sticking around in the corner. So I spent the first 6 years dealing with that. And then what happened is around 08, 09, 10, those guys started to, got a new batch in, and we thought, okay, let's form a team from scratch. And the number one thing I went after was people who are thinkers. So we added like Mad Cans, like Beefy was like, he'd been playing for a little while at the league scene, but he was pretty new back then. And he certainly wasn't like the most skilled player or anything like that, but it's like, nah, get Beefy in because he knows how to think about the game. Smart as. We had a guy called Shaz. We had Wooly, and Ivo came along. Then suddenly we had this group of guys that were all actively engaged in the conversation. And for me, that was like, we built our team around that. And we just, we were lucky that we're all good mates as well. We all became really good mates, which has other advantages, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, figuring that what was really important to me in forming a team and then going after it was kind of the first step in getting things in the right direction. Still took us 5 years to win one, but it was, every journey has its first step. So yeah.
100%. I think it's only with a team of people where like the characteristics of the people, like the culture of the team, the goals, when they're all aligned, everything's good. That's the only time where you can go to those tournaments and like lose and actually like come out the other end like way better off for it. If you don't have those things like lined up and you go to a tournament that doesn't go well, then it's just like, all right, well, these guys suck. I hate this team. That wasn't fun. I'm gonna play with the better team next time. You end up with all of those kinds of things happening. So, yeah, even if you build this perfect team, like personality wise and traits and playstyle, whatever it is, that doesn't mean you're immediately gonna just like win every tournament. But it means you're going to be in a position where when you lose, you can actually get the most out of that experience and then win the next one or the next one.
Totally. Yeah. We all know how easy one loss is to turn into 2, 3, 4 losses at a tournament if you can't get your shit together. So
yeah, that was aftershock at Prenuts too. That was our experience.
Oh, that was for different reasons, though, wasn't it?
That
you
was
guys
for
are all good
reasons.
chums.
Yeah. No, that wasn't the issue.
Out. Yeah.
Something like that.
I guess the next piece is it's kind of linked to what we just spoke about, but the whole profiling. I'll call it profiling, but it's just kind of like more so than an attribute. It's more like their age, experience, how close do they live to the site, because obviously that's important for regularity at training, stuff like that. So it's just something that you also want to give consideration to as well. So you might have somebody who totally gets along with the team, agrees with the team, is pretty good mates with the team, all that kind of stuff. But if they're just too young and inexperienced to like be, competing where you want to be competing, or you've already got one inexperienced player and your cap is only like, okay, we can fit one into the team, but we can't have 2 or more like super green players, then yeah, you want to be giving that consideration as well. But that's kind of just a little side point. But just to flow on from that, I think once you've got those foundational pieces figured out about how you want to form your team, what your sort of profile is for your team, I guess you want to start establishing some bottom lines for your team as well. Or what are bottom lines? A lot of teams don't really actively go through this process, and it's I guess you can get away with it if through actions you've demonstrated that you adhere to them anyway. But what I mean by bottom lines is like what people might call core values or boundaries per se, but things like never giving up, always showing up for team talks on time, like never like actively going at another player on the team in public or something like that. Like these are all like absolute rules, team rules that don't get broken essentially. You want to establish what they are so that there's a clear understanding. You don't get into a situation, because you're going to get to a tournament, pressure's going to be higher than ever, And that's when these things are going to start to emerge. So I feel like it's really productive to actually have a conversation about these things, particularly with players that you haven't played with before. If you've played with players before and you kind of know how they behave, and you feel like it's maybe not really a necessary conversation, you can probably get away with it. But particularly with a new team, I think it's really valuable to go, okay, this is unacceptable in the team. We're just establishing this as a bottom line right now.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like as you was listing those off, like a big one that came to my head, something that I try and enforce in any teams that I play on is that if something's going wrong in the game, even if you think, like, let's say your captain makes a decision, your in-game leader makes a decision, and you think it's wrong, if you go like, hey, should we really do this or whatever, even if you try, if you check and you go like, should we do this? And they say like, no, we're doing this, just commit to what your captain's decision is, because you're better off having like 5 people making the wrong decision, like together as a team, than like 4 people trying to do one thing and then one person going like, nah, that's wrong, I'm going to do my own thing. Because one, it makes it difficult to actually, when you have your team chat afterwards, you're like, no, that was the wrong decision. And they go like, no, I think it was right, but we're never going to know because you didn't even bloody stick to it. You went and did your own thing, right? So like in terms of stunting, like that's like basically a wasted game, right? Like that's a game you could have actually figured out whether that thing was good or not, but because you took it upon yourself to go like, I think that's wrong, I'm going to go do something else, the thing I think is right. Like it's a wasted game. You don't actually know by the end of it. And then 2, it's just, again, just like building up that resentment between players on the team, and you lose a bit of that trust. And trust is obviously one of the most important things on a team. If you don't trust your captain to make good decisions, and you don't trust your underlings to actually follow those decisions, then yeah, it's gonna be a rough time. But no, that was a big one that came up like as you were listing those. Is just, if you have like a problem with something that's happened in the game, just keep going, follow along with the thing, and then bring it up afterwards. If a teammate, even if a teammate makes a mistake, right? Don't like call them out and be like, bro, that was all you. Like, that's your fault, and get mad at them. Like during the game, that's just going to make, okay, you just made them feel horrible and they're going to play worse for the rest of the game. And yeah, it's just not a nice thing. Like save it for after the game,
Yeah. And that's also a part of trust as well, I reckon. It's like people trusting that you're not going to embarrass them in front of people, trusting that you're going to be respectful to the other players on the team. And it's interesting you mentioned about the trust thing, because there's an amazing book that I recommend to everybody that I talk to about these kinds of things, but called The Speed of Trust by a guy called Stephen Covey, who's a very popular business author. But essentially it goes through how it takes you through the mechanics of essentially how what trust does is actually speeds up everything. So with greater trust in the team, you can like accelerate your like growth and development and stuff. Like when people distrust each other in the team, then you get more of those incidents where they don't follow each other's guide or each other's instructions, and then you don't learn the lesson you needed to learn from that game. So then you've got to play another game to learn the same lesson, and then it's kind of slowed down the whole process. So if everybody trusts each other, even if the decision is wrong, you will still progress along the journey, essentially. So yeah, I think 100%. It's a massive part of it. Yeah. So next thing I was going to chat about was code of conduct for a team. Not that you need to have like your own written code of conduct, but
sign
one
here.
thing I used to like. Yeah, like I mean, we have one at Zeltac, so you don't even need to like have a code of conduct. Yeah. You've already signed one for the tournament. But one the kind of behaviors that I used to be big on was like, how much are you going to drink at the midweek drinks? It's like, let's have that conversation, because I think if you're going to be competitive, especially it used to be on the Wednesday. I think it used to be on the Wednesday every week, and then they moved it back to the Tuesday. And you start playing Cascades on the Wednesday and Thursday. Like it's right in the like most important part of the competition. If you've got players on your team that are just going to the midweek, like going and socializing, like I know other tournaments might not have a midweek a social, but in Australia we do. And then, but anyway, any tournament usually have social things happening every night anyway, people gathering and stuff like that. If people are going out and like drinking a lot, staying up late, all that kind of stuff, it's actually impacting the rest of the team. So having a little bit of an understanding of like what's acceptable in terms of socializing. Obviously, people are paying their own money, and the social part of it's really important. So, you don't want to eliminate it, but I think just having an understanding of what's acceptable. And for a team, for certain teams, it's going to be like, no, we're going to go out and get classes every night and socialize heaps. Like that's what we're there
I know
to
a
do.
few
Like,
times. I know a few teams like that. Tell you that much.
yeah, exactly. Like that's their MO. That's their one wood. It's like we socialize with everybody. We're playing a 3-team game here. You've got to have friends in the arena. Sometimes they can throw results a certain way. It's really important. That's a common excuse you might hear.
Yeah.
But yeah, like conduct around that kind of stuff. Conduct around also smack talking as well. Like what's the line? I've played on some teams with some absolutely A-grade smack talkers. And yeah, occasionally they would approach the line of what was acceptable. But fortunately, I don't think we ever really stepped over it. But yeah, if you've got people on your team who are a little bit racy like that can say some things that get under people's skin, it might be important to have a bit of a conversation about where the line is on that kind of stuff, because it does reflect on the entire team. Any one player on the team's behaviours can reflect on the entire team. So when it comes to conduct stuff, that might be stuff that's not, it's more specific than what you'll probably find in the code of conduct, essentially. Especially when you know things about other players at the tournament and you can really get under their skin. You know what relationships they've been in, you know what relationships they were in after they were in that other relationship and all that kind of stuff. You can really get to people. So it might be important to decide what you can and can't talk about in the arena.
Yeah, 100%. No, I think it's funny, you talk about it. So Church on Aftershock is obviously the single nicest person in the world. And so Beefy and I love a little bit of smack talk on the team as well. Mikey does sometimes. He does sometimes, but it's mainly Beefy and I for the smack talk. And yeah, we do any smack talk and Lauren catches or Church catches wind of it. During the game, you could just instantly see she's just pissed off. It was man, why are you being mean to these people?
Oh,
so
really?
so we really had to if we were going to do a bit of smack talk, it has to be out of her earshot, or just in general, we just smack talked a lot less when we realized, okay, this is actually making one player in our team really upset. So let's just let's chill on that one, unless it's But what's funny is when she would smack talk, so she would sometimes, but it'd be I don't know, her style of smack talk was almost accidental smack talk, She didn't even realize she was smack talking sometimes, but it was always so funny for us. She would tell us something she said after the game. We were like, why are you allowed to say that and we're not? She was like, what do you mean? It's fine. So, no, I think, yeah, it's fun. That's just all I thought about when you mentioned the smack talk. It's funny.
Yeah, and I hope it never we never eliminate it completely from the game, because I think in any sport, the mental game, the mind game is a big part of it, right? If you've got to have thick skin, you've got to allow things to just slide off you. So yeah, smack talk's funny, it's entertaining when it's done respectfully. And yeah, I think it adds to the game. It also adds to the skill set required to be successful at the game. So
true.
Although I'm a terrible smack talker, but I always valued having really good smack talkers on my teams. Probably the two best smack talkers we ever had was obviously Wooldot and Ivo. They were A graders, and they were both always manning a door in defense. So they were always able to be in the right spot to get.
They're in a good position to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't want to be smack talking when you're in attack, because obviously you're too often getting your arse handed to you. So yeah, you're not in a great position to be smack talking at that point.
No, it's too damn stressful out there.
Yeah. So I guess the next thing when putting your team together, starting to establish how you want to go about it, I think is to establish clear expectations around training and training expectations. So leading into the tournament, and obviously when you get to the tournament as well, in terms of your commitment. And yeah, I think that's such an important conversation, because if you don't have it, then you get that player that's only rocking up for half the trainings or a third of the trainings, you can't be upset at that person because you didn't have the conversation beforehand. But yeah, if you do have it, then you might save yourself a bit of heartache, essentially. So yeah, and then of course I guess if you want to take it one step further, when you get to a tournament, actually sort of talking about what kind of commitment you want to have inside the training sessions at the tournament, because often you get very limited amounts of time. This might be a good time to segue into, do you want to talk a little bit about training at this point?
I would love to.
How to make the most of the training. Yeah.
So this is more specifically the thing that I've been talking, like just saying to all of the Adelaide teams recently is, I think a trap. So specifically I'm going to start off the training that you have at home, like in the lead up to the tournament, not the training like at the tournament. Because I think you kind of have to think about that a little bit differently. Because as you said, like quite often you have very limited time, but then also your priorities are going to change slightly because it's a new arena, potentially a new system. Ready for Wax to get triggered, apparently. We'll see how I go. I'll try not to. Actually, maybe I will. But so a big thing that Aftershock has really made a point of. I'm going to talk about Aftershock a bit because this is like the team that I've, really implemented these kinds of things with the most in recent years. But going into every single training session and at the start having a very clear project that you're working on, right? And that could be a team-wide project. So maybe you're trying a specific strategy, like a specific setup of your entire team. And then, you're working out the kinks for that. Okay, when does it work? When does it not work? What positions do we want people in? Like, how are we swapping our players? Like, as like people start to get bases, all of those sorts of things, right? But it can also be individual projects as well. And I think you can most definitely do both. So obviously the onus is on the individual to keep themselves accountable, and stay on top of whatever their project is. But then the team-wide thing is like something that everyone can kind of just be thinking about. And that's like a general way of talking about it. But I think too often people get lulled into that false sense of security almost. It was like, oh, Nationals is bloody ages away. And then they just rock up to training. They're happy to see their mates or whatever. They socialize a bit. And then the first, whatever drills, team games, however you do your training goes in. And then you go in, you just play, you come out, you're talking, whatever. And then by the time you get to the end of the training session, if someone asks you, what's the thing that you actually improved on this session? And if they would be like, I don't know. I just kind of went in and played. I wasn't really thinking about it. And that to me is there's plenty, you obviously, especially if you're newer, you will get better just by virtue of playing more. But eventually it'll get to the point where the value you get out of just playing diminishes significantly. And you need to have a very clear goal on what you're working on. So an exercise that I've been doing recently that I actually got from my mixed martial arts coach from Complete Control Martial Arts. Shout out to that guy, Alan. Cool dude. It'll be the end of an MMA training session. There's a room of 20 super sweaty macho dudes, and we sit down in a circle, and he gets every single one of us to say one thing that we did really well, and then one thing that we need to improve on. It's a very simple exercise, but it's a way of kind of forcing. I say force. It's not the right word, but it's a way of getting people to be self-reflective, because I find quite often a lot of there's obviously very responsible people, I guess, that you don't need to ask them to self-reflect. They will spend all night. They'll be awake night, hands on heads, I did all of these things wrong. Why? There's people like that, and maybe they don't get as much out of that exercise. But for the people I was saying before that they just kind of rock up and play and then they go home, that exercise is a really good way to actually get them thinking about it. So just saying something you did well is just a nice way to pat yourself on the back, because you don't want to just say all the things you did bad. And then just saying one thing that you need to improve on is a really good way of informing, okay, whatever that one thing was, let's say it's an individual thing. Let's say I'm door defending and I missed a bunch of comms. I missed, I was just backing myself to win duels and I was just losing. And then I was back now. And then it was too late. And I was able to identify that. Then next week I can make at the start of the session, you can review your whole team's one thing I did wrong thing. And you're like, okay, so you're going to be focusing on your like comms, because like last week you were missing quite a lot of comms, just backing yourself to win drills. And then you're going to have that in the back of your mind for every single game or drill that you play that night. And it's by making a conscious effort to do something that you actually do it. You know, it's not enough to identify, oh, my comms were really bad, if you then go into the next training session and you don't even think about it and you just play like another game. You need to actually have it in your mind and make a conscious effort to do it. The only way you fix things is by making a conscious effort to do it, and you do that enough until it becomes second nature, and then you don't have to think about it anymore.
That's that reflection piece is so key to like making gradual improvements. And one of the things when we're coaching new players, particularly at league, when there's like 100 skills to learn, and they've got, they're coming in for the first time, and also rolls into just when you're taking like inexperienced players to a pre-nats or something like that for the first time. I think it's really important to focus on the like one, maximum two things at a time to work on, because if you bombard people with like, oh, this and this and this and this and this and this and this, all of it just gets lost in the mire of everything that you've just explained. So,
100%.
But if you start training early and you attending regularly and you just work on that one thing each game, or you get a reflection, like if you're really good at receiving feedback from somebody who's more experienced and you've invited them to, coach you, then, and if they give you one thing every game to look at, it's so easy to digest that one thing that you'll actually you'll be able to focus on it, improve it each game. So
yeah,
I guess that's a bit of advice if you've got inexperienced players on your team, or if you're teaching people the first time, try to trim it right back to one, maximum two things at a time that you're coaching them on after the game. So after the game, you can ask them what they thought they did well and what you think they can improve. And then also if they've invited you to be, to coach them, or if they look up to you as a guide, then I would offer them the same thing. Oh, this is something that was excellent, and one thing we can work on for next time is this one thing, and then explain how to do it essentially. And just to add to what you're saying about the training thing and the reflecting thing, I feel like the intensity that you train at is also very important. Because it's very easy to rock up to training and just like kind of go through the motions. And if you do that, you're actually like doing yourself a complete disservice, because it's not going to be going through the motions when you actually get to the big comp. And I've probably trained less frequently than I used to. Now that I live many hours away from the site, and I'm not playing the big tournaments and stuff anymore. I just kind of play tournaments here and there, so I train less. So I've noticed the difference in the level of training at the Brisbane site over the years. And I go there now, and if you don't go at 110%, you're going to get your butt handed to you hard. So the guys there, one of the big reasons that they've been so successful in the Queensland scene is because they've all pushed themselves to train at such a high intensity that they're getting practice playing at kind of Nats level every week, once or twice a week, depending on if there's a tournament on that Sunday. If I have an advice for a budding scene, I know it can be really challenging to find the inspiration and the drive to like want to like show up and like train really intense when you're training, you're playing against the same 5 or 10 players every single week. That's the challenge that you have, is to try and find the drive to play at a super high level. But if you can do that, the quality of your training and the amount you'll advance will be significant, because we're talking about such fine margins between the middle and top tier. They're not massive margins between these teams, and when you train at such high intensity, it's just those fractions of a second in your reaction time, in your quality of your comms, the timing of your comms, all that kind of stuff just gets to the consistency of your comms. All that stuff just goes to that extra 2% level, and then suddenly you're competing at another tier in the tournament.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think just circling back to what you were saying before on the not giving, like actually like the exercise of saying, I guess you could say as many things you did well as you like, but I think for people that maybe struggle with self-reflection, or like you said, they're a little bit less experienced and they might get overwhelmed, giving them just like, and or giving them or giving yourself, depending on how this exercise goes, one thing to work on. Because, you know, even if you like, you write it down, I also recommend you should write these down as well. Like whether you have a team Discord or a team chat or just like a team book or something, like write down everyone's like things they did well, one thing they need to improve on. Otherwise it just gets lost into the void. You're like, what's that thing I need to work on? I don't know. I'll just go play some laser tag. But no, I think it's very easy. I mean, we've all been there when you have a day where there's like so many things you need to get done, right? You know, so many chores. I need to do the washing. I needed to go cook dinner. I need to go to the shops for that dinner. I need to go bloody whatever. Those are the days where it's really easy to just go like, I'm just going to do none of that and I'm going to binge watch some Netflix or whatever, you know? And it's the same thing, I think, with like identifying things you need to improve on. If you give someone too many things, they're going to go into the next week and they're going to go like, I don't know which one to do. Okay, it's time to play. Okay, I'm just going to go play some laser tag. 100%. And that's the advice I gave to the particularly like the newer players that we've had starting recently. Yeah, just choose one thing. I think as Aftershock, when we do the exercise, like we identify like 2 or 3 things, but they're also usually the things we're identifying are things that we know how to do, but it's maybe just a skill set that like kind of like dropped off a little bit, you know, like we all know the right comms. We all know when to say them and why to say them. It's just you might have a week where it just drops off. And like you were saying before, like you really want to keep yourself to the highest standard you can in your training. Because, you know, when times get tough, the pressure's on, you know, you're going to stoop to the level of your training. And if you're training at a, you know, at a low level, you're going to play at a low level as well.
So I've got a question for you, mate. And this question is for the purposes of like unpacking the priorities when you rock up to a tournament, a big tournament, and you've got very limited training time. I would have paint a scenario for you and want you to tell me kind of what you would do.
Okay.
But you rock up to an arena that you've never played before. You've got 2 hours of training time, and with your team and 2 other teams, let's say, you could. Whoa, hello there.
Hey. Yep, Mum just got home. He's very excited. It's okay.
Good boy. Yeah. How would you spend your 2 hours? You could do games, drills. Like what things do you do, and like what things you're prioritizing learning? Yeah.
So I think 100% the first priority is like, I say learning the arena, but that's way too general. I think it's learning how to do like the most fundamental things, right? So I think that doing drills initially is like the single best thing that you can focus on. And you can start off with, you're not going to be able to win any games if no one knows, like when they go into red base, what spot they're going to start shooting the base from. You know, you could play the perfect strategy, but if now it gets to the point, okay, I've gotten into red base, and then I'm like, oh, hello again. I don't know where I'm going to shoot this base from. You're going to panic and you're going to shoot from the wrong spot and you're going to get denied, right? So I think one of the top things is like learning your shooter spots, and you might have different shooter spots depending on which door you come from. Obviously, it depends on the base design, but learning your shooter spots and then doing a drill that Aftershock does quite a lot is we'll set someone in that shooter spot and we'll do a drill where they're putting, like, you got infinite base destroyers and they're in the position, they're putting shots on the base, and then the rest of the team is just lined up and they're just sprinting through the other door trying to deny them. And if that person gets them, they take their place and then they start putting shots on, and then the next person like starts coming through. And you just you have a nice little circular drill there. And if 2 people double, like the person shooting doubles with the person coming for the deny, they both just walk out and the next person takes that spot. That's a drill that we've gotten a lot of mileage out of. We even do it at home sometimes. If we feel like, you know, like recently we identified someone on the team as like, they were starting to like panic putting shots on the base. I was like, all right, next week when we do our drill segment, because we do like drills and team games in Adelaide. When we do the drill segment, we're going to do that drill of like shooting the base and covering yourself, and you are going to be the person shooting the base every time. You know, even if we get you.
just basically like unlimited shots to destroy the base, essentially. Is that how you do it?
I mean, if I was obviously, if I could, I would. I think, but when you do your training at nationals, you're going to be there with other teams, and usually like unlimited shots on a base isn't really like doesn't line up with what everyone wants to do. So usually we just leave it at normal, but I know there's some value in that as well. But that's something we've gotten a lot of mileage out of. Again, from an attacking perspective, is you're not going to be able to put any shots onto the base if you're not able to crack the last line out of that position. So identifying like, okay, like what's the best way for us to get this person out of this position? Is this something I can conceivably do just like as an individual player? Like, and then not just imagining some chump last lining, like imagine it's Husky's last lining the base. If he was in there, would I be able to just lunge him out like by myself? No? Okay. What do we have to set up to be able to get in? And usually the answer is like a pin. That's like the most standard one, right? Like two people on either side of a door. One person's like watching for a phaser and kind of like limiting how far the last line can swing out, and the other person's like dashing in to draw out a shot. And if they take the shot, the pinning person can hit the phaser. If they don't take the shot or they miss, then the person lunging in gets a shot on them. That's like a super standard one. But I think knowing how you want to set up whether it's a pin or maybe identify this base like pinning is pointless, we need to really come from both doors. Figuring that kind of stuff out and then just executing it over and over and over again during your drilling so that it becomes second nature. Like during a team game, as soon as both of you and your teammate are up, it's like, all right, pin. You don't even have to say anything. You're just like, oh, they're in the spot, I'm in the spot. Okay, I do this bit, So yeah, you're not going to get bases if you A, can't take the last line out, or B, you don't even know where you want to take the bloody base from, right? Or like where the best places to take it from. And then I guess from a more defensive perspective is, well, the other side of that coin is where is your last line going to play? Like, is this a base that even requires a last line? Like obviously the Bendigo bases, became pretty popular to not even have someone in the base, right? Some teams did, but as a door defender, like looking at the lines of sight and be like, oh, could I play here? No, I'm going to get shot by like a bajillion people over that way. I really kind of need to play in this kind of area. And then obviously your comms, like, if you don't have a discussion on like what the doors are called, you get into a game, you're like, one here? I don't know. And then I guess the other side of that is naming the positions in the base. So from a defending perspective, let's say your last line gets lunged out and they start putting shots in the base. If you can't call where that person is and there's multiple shooter spots, your defenders might come up in time and they might like lunge in time. But if they don't know where they're aiming for, there's not very much time to do it. They might like take their shot and it's like, oh, they were in that spot. Like, why didn't you just say they were in that spot? We didn't have a name for it. Is usually the answer.
Yeah.
So yeah, identifying at least like for the key spots in the base, like having names for them. And then, you can get a lot of mileage out of just like doing attack versus defenses against yourself, kind of once you've figured these things out and be like, okay, when we're attacking, like you've been really easy to deal with as a door defender. Maybe you could try, I think if you position here instead, it'd actually make you really difficult to deal with. And then you do another AVD and you start playing that. It's like, oh yeah, this spot's really good. Or be like, wait, you're like super good in this base. Like you're going to be playing this base like every game. Yeah, I think that, and then play some team games. Because obviously you need to learn the layout of the whole arena, figure out where the damn reloads are, especially if it's a big arena like Albury. But I think if in a perfect world, I would choose to do all of those drills before I even think about doing a team game. Obviously, at Nats, it doesn't always work out that way because of how the training works. Like, you might be in someone else's block and they've already done all of their drills, or they just want to do team games, and then you go, okay, well, we have to do some bloody team games. So sometimes it's not really in your hands, but if I could choose, I would do all of those drills and then do some team games. Because like I said before, you could play a perfect strategical game, but if your defense doesn't know how to set up, you don't have comms for inside the base, Your attackers don't know how to deal with the last line. Your attacker doesn't even know like where the best place to shoot the base is from. It doesn't matter. You're just going to lose all of those games. And then, you know, a lot of teams will fall into the trap of not even talking about those things, and they'll talk about strategically. Oh, what did we need to do different strategically? I was like, well, your defense didn't hold and your attackers didn't get bases. Like the issue isn't the strategy. The issue is the execution of like the fundamental parts of the game.
Yeah.
That was a bit of a long-wind gas bag from me, but
no, that's spot on, mate. You could totally fit all that into 2 hours too, I reckon. Quite seriously. The only thing that because I actually had this experience, I think it might have been at Hobart actually. Everybody had gone to Prenats 1, I think, or 2, and I only rocked up to Prenats 3. I think the only thing I did differently was that I actually was like, can we please have a team game first, just so I know actually where the shooter spots are and all that, like just to have a game to actually familiarize myself with what the flow of the bases and stuff was.
Sure.
And then straight into drills essentially.
Yeah.
And a way I like to think about it is like, what are the things that are going to be really hard to hone the craft during the competition? So like this, you know, when you're holding those positions inside a base, sometimes it's like an inch either side that you know, moving your body just like an inch this way or twisting a little bit that way, or those tiny micro like movements of your body make the massivest difference for being able to actually hold the spot properly. And that's kind of stuff that's really hard to like figure out once the comp's underway. You can figure out all the floating routes and like, you know, intricacies with your strategy and stuff like that. You can work on all that as the competition progresses. But what you can't do is get inside the base, position yourself on the wall, get your mate to stand at the door and shoot towards your shoulder.
Can you see me from here?
Yeah, exactly. Like, can you get that reflection off that wall there and all that kind of stuff? Like, you can't do any of that once the comp started. So it's like, let's get in and like make sure we've nailed all those things first. Like, remember that the door in red, everybody at Hobart, everyone's trying to figure out whether you could reflect off the door and get the guy at the V and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like figuring out all these shots, what shots can you get through the base? You know, if I hold this and take the base from here, am I going to be able to get hit from this spot over there? And figuring all those things out is so important before the comp starts. And yeah, all the things you mentioned, man, like how to crack, how to hold the bases. And then once you've got and I feel like every player on the team needs to be familiar with that stuff, because yes, you're going to have a last line, but the last line's got to go out and get bases or has to go reload at times. And we're all going to be inside that base at some time, or you're going to be inside the base attacking it and having to cover yourself. So you're going to need to know how to do this stuff. So regardless of your role in the team, everybody needs to know how to hold those internal spots really well. So, yeah, I feel like that's the most important thing right at the beginning of the training, is to get that. And then once you kind of got that sorted, get into your attack versus defense, get into your like team games, and just like double down on your comms. Like just focus on making sure your comms are like spot on and sharp and the timing's right, because you know what last lines are like. They like to have a comm on a door at a particular time so that they know when to respond and stuff like that. So you've got to kind of iron all those things out. But
I think also not being afraid, because it is training. So like the actual result itself obviously doesn't matter. All that matters is who's getting the most out of this. If you were to think about it in a competitive lens, like I'm competing against these other people in a training game, the competition isn't who's winning the game. It's who's getting the most out of this game to prepare them for the games that do matter. So I think even if you are there and you're during the game, you know, and like someone comes in, and it's the example I said before, they take out your last line, they start shooting from a weird spot that you didn't think they could shoot from, but they are, and they're getting, you know, they're covering themselves from there. Like during the game, just be like, what's the name for that spot again? And they'll be like, oh, it's that. Okay, yeah, cool. And you can kind of like laugh about it as well because you forgot the name of the spot. But it is really hard to remember, like, you know, a base like Albury Blue, for instance, Aftershock has 4 comms for the internals that like double up, like whether it's the front side or the back side of it. So there's 8 comms for the internals of a base. But they were very distinct, like different positions that I think like we felt at least comming those positions was really important. And you know, it's going to be hard to like just look at a maze map and go like, that's the names for all of these spots, and then go into your team games and you're just perfectly comming all of those. No, you're gonna forget them. But if it's during your training, just be like, what's the name for this spot again? And we're like, oh, okay, that's back pocket. Okay, my bad.
That's such a good point. Like, how often a game's decided by less than a base, especially at the really pointy end. And like, if you've got a comp for that spot that guy's shooting from, and another team doesn't, and that means that you get the denial, or you're able to take a base because you're able to like com where the defender was standing because I was standing in a weird spot or something like that. Like, it can totally be the difference. And the like the better quality training that you do earlier, the more chance you are of being able to like I guess fill out your comms list and like get all those little spots that might only get used 1 or 2% of the time. But like, if you start early and train hard early and you've got all your foundational comms down, you can like add those little 1 or 2% comms in there. You never know, it might make a difference in the game.
100%. I think also, like, from an attacking perspective, let's say you're in a team game now, and you during your drills amongst yourselves, you thought that like pinning the door in this way to deal with the last line was the best way to deal with them. Like, when you were like, you do a little bit of theory crafting, because some of it is based on like how you just assume it's going to play without playing team games. And then you get into your team games and then you go to do it, and then it's just being completely thwarted by something. Just take the time during the game to be like, go to your teammate, and like, it might be your captain, and be like, bro, this sucks. Like, I can't do anything because of that guy. And be like, yeah, true. Maybe let's try, even if you take an extra death or two, taking the time in the game to be like, let's try do it this way instead. It's just, you can catch those little 1%ers earlier. And yeah, as I said before, like, if you want to think about it in a competitive way, you're competing against the other teams to see who's going to get the most out of this training. And if you're taking the time to like do stuff like that, you've gotten 1% better than you would have, yeah. So I think there's a level of like, take your training seriously, but don't take it so seriously that you're like, if things are going wrong, you can't take the time to like just stand there and think and like look around, like, because all the pieces are in play. You can really like, you're not theory crafting anymore. You're in it. You'll be like, oh, I reckon if I just went there instead, I could deal with that. Oh yeah, that's pretty good. And then you can talk about it after the game and tell the rest of the team, and they go like, oh, okay, cool. I was really struggling doing that as well.
Great. Mistakes are the best. That's what training's about, is like, make as many mistakes as you can, because that's your opportunity to enhance what you know.
You should always be you should, I think, when you're making mistakes, like when you fail, I guess there's like your negative response and your positive response. Your negative response is just being frustrated you made a mistake, and your positive response is turning that frustration into curiosity and being like, oh, how do I fix that? I could do this instead. But you should, and that's the way you should think about your training. You should almost be like happy anytime a mistake is made, because you're like, thank God we made that mistake now, and not in finals, and or not in a golden game that cost us finals. Like, yeah, even like early on in the tournament, in like round robin, Cascade 1 as well. If you're making mistakes there, you should be happy they're happening then, because you're catching them, not when it matters as much.
Yeah. We case in point, I'm not sure if you remember 2018 when Maroons went through undefeated in the round robin and then proceeded to like lose like constantly for the next 2 Cascades. Yeah, we didn't learn the lessons that we needed to learn, because we just kind of cruised through and did what we needed to do to, get faced with so many games. We got one strong team, one weak team. We just learned how to play those games well. And then when it got to the real stuff, we hadn't actually figured out how to crack the best last lines out and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, be willing to make mistakes early on. Like, even if it's going to potentially, make it a little bit more difficult to win an early game, but it's going to set you up for a longer term success. Then
it's not even willing. It's happy to make mistakes early on.
Yeah.
You could be willing and like not happy about it, but if you're willing and happy, you're probably going to get a little bit more out of it. You're going to feel better about the experience, which is just, I think, a good thing in general.
I think you notice that when you look at the more experienced players come out of games where things haven't gone right, and, often they'll have a smile on their face because they understand it's like, it's there's a bigger picture at play. And, a younger player will like put so much importance on every standoff sometimes, or every denial or every base, and particularly every game result. But a tournament is a journey, not it's not just about one game. So looking at the big picture is a big part of it.
100%.
What else have you got to share about this whole topic, my friend? Anything you wanted to add to the list of things we've talked about?
Yeah, so I guess the last thing was getting the most out of your team chats during a tournament, because I think there's definitely like your priorities should definitely shift a little bit, I guess, in terms of what you're talking about. But I think also, actually, more than that, I think the biggest thing that's way harder at a tournament than during your training, like in the off season, we'll say, or like the lead up to a tournament, is the passion that you'll get like during a tournament. In a training game, someone makes a mistake after the game, you might be like, hey bro, like, there was a few comms that you missed this game. And you're like, yeah, all good, bro. That same player at a tournament in a game that they like, got absolutely destroyed in, or like a game that they only just lost, that it's very easy for that, oh, you just missed a couple comms, to be like, dude, we dropped that base because of you, and we lost that game because of you. It's very, because it's very like the tensions are high pressure. Everyone's really passionate. People are spending heaps of money. They want to get the most out of this they can. It's really, really easy to let that passion kind of bubble over and turn into just like absolutely flaming your teammates. And that just makes you look like a tool, right? No one likes the guy that's just flaming their teammates. I know, because I have been that person. I'm not saying a lot of these things I'm saying, if it's something like the bad, negative thing, I've most definitely done it many times. Okay. So I'm not saying I'm like a perfect saint. I've definitely done these things before, but you just look like a tool. The person's not going to take whatever you said very well, right? They might just go like, oh, screw that guy. Like, it's just being an ass. Even if what you said was right, if you get angry at someone, their defenses and their walls go up. And then when people's defenses and walls go up, they don't take like criticism, no matter what form it comes in. And then, you're just kind of diminishing that trust, as we were talking before, that camaraderie and that kind of respect that you have for your teammates. It just builds up resentment and stuff. So I think a big thing that I see all too often in tournaments is, you walk past another team's team chat and you can just see, like, sometimes they're literally pointing fingers, they're getting really heated at each other. Everyone's blaming someone else for something that happened. Don't do it. Just don't do it, guys. It's like the least productive thing you can do. It's more important than ever to like sticking to whatever your team kind of code of conduct is. Don't be an asshole to your teammates, because they're not just your teammates, they're also your friends. Right? If you think about it, like, outside of like this laser tag tournament, if you were just like hanging out at the pub or whatever, you would never talk to them like that. Like, why are you talking to your friends like that? It doesn't make any sense. Again, I know, because I've done it before. I've been guilty before.
Oh yeah, we've all been dicks before. That's everybody's guilty of that. But I think the art of coaching for me is like, that's the art of coaching in a nutshell, what you just described, which is how do you communicate like important things that need to be communicated, which actually uplifts the other person, so they feel good about themselves at the end of it. So like going silent about something is not the solution either, because nothing gets resolved. So you have to say something, but like, what do you say and how do you say it? And like, this is like, to go back to the beginning again, I think one of the most important things you can do with your team is actually form the strength of the relationships, because when the relationships within the team are strong, you can actually be much more candid. Like, and this is something that, I experienced on the Maroons. We're all very good mates. No doubt you guys now know each other so well on Aftershock. I know, for a fact, Catalyst, they've been mates for a long time now. They can probably have some very candid conversations with each other, and nobody's going to take it personally. And everyone's just going to, like, if it's a bit heated because it's a really important game or something like that, it's probably just going to slide straight off them. So the more you can build the relationships on your team, the easier that is. However, if you're playing on a newer team or with newer players, you really have to modify. And the story I have to tell about that is that I came off Maroons on 2018, and then on 2019 I played for the Beavers. And in the Beavers was a couple of experienced players and one brand new player called Falcon, who's actually returning this year playing for the Catalyst boys. And I remember that I came out of a game, it might have been at a pre-nats or a training event or something like that, and I started talking to him the same way that we would all talk to each other on the Maroons, which was very direct, like very like there's usually a lot of energy in it. And it was just, and the way he received it was like, I could tell he was really like visibly upset by it. And I had to check myself and go, oh shit, I've got to remember I'm not actually playing with my old boys anymore. Like I'm playing with, and Falcon back then was young. Like he was probably only 17 or 18, I think potentially at the time. So I had to really check myself and modify the way I deliver the message. So yeah, I guess the moral of that story was that, you do have to modify how you communicate with people based upon who the person is. Like if they're a brand new player playing their first big tournament and they're like young, you really need to like be a lot softer than if it's somebody that you've been playing with for 5 years and you guys have a really close relationship. But of course, then the more you can strengthen those relationships over the time, the more easy it is to be direct. And the advantage of being direct is that sometimes in a big tournament, you might have like 15 minutes between two big games. Like, you know, you've lost your first game in finals and you're about to turn around and go back in and you've just dropped a track and things haven't gone right and you have a very limited amount of time. Like by the time you check your scores, go have a drink, everybody gathers outside, and then you might have like 3 or 4 minutes to talk before you get back in. So the ability to be direct and have a quick conversation is important. So that's the advantage of, I guess, strengthening relationships in your team, is that you can have the capacity to do those chats in those moments.
Yeah, and I think going on from that, like the building relationships is obviously, so even when you have those guys that get super angry and they start flaming their teammates, even though like, you know, there is a difference between just being an asshole and being candid, like you said, and just being direct. There is a difference. Usually the name calling part, that's usually a bit of it. There is a difference, but even for the person that's getting super aggressive, understanding that isn't coming from a place of them like hate. It's coming from a place of they're just super passionate about like the game and the sport and the team, and they're not getting angry because they don't care. They're getting super heated because they care quite a lot. And when you have that relationship with the team and the players, you know, like you said, like even if someone does say something that's a little bit like, oh, that was a bit abrasive, like you can kind of acknowledge like they don't mean it to be mean. They're just like, we just came out of a game that we lost and it's a really important game. They're just like super passionate about this, you know, and so you can kind of like take what they said in, you know, filter out the aggression levels and be like, it's just because we just came out of a game, you know, and they're a bit heated. They got like a denied to shit, and then keep on going, for sure. And I think that's actually, once again, like I am definitely one of the players that I am super passionate about it. So I can come out of a game, you know, I'm bloody like frothing at the mouth almost, you know, and I'm like just talking about something that went wrong. I'm not meaning it from a place of like trying to like trash someone or be mean. I just mean it from, I'm coming from a place of like, I just really want to fix whatever this problem is so we can move on and be the team be better for it. And so like the team sometimes like they'll still call me out on it, but like there'll be some times where I can kind of see they'll just give me a look and I'll just know that like they've taken what I've said, but they've had to kind of filter out my passion levels out of it. But you're not going to get that, like you said, with an inexperienced or like with a new team. You really need to build up that quite a lot. Not to say it's not excusing like when I come out of a game and I am a bit more abrasive than I should be. It's not an excuse, but it's just like it's a mitigation, I guess, of how negatively that impacts the rest of the team.
Do you guys have a thing where you know, like if somebody comes out like something really bad's happened during the game, like they're super triggered, like somebody's like cheated to get a base and it's won in the game, or like a ref's made like a terrible call or something like that, and you've got to like each person has their own way of like having to just like blow off steam for like a minute or two to like, do you guys talk about that, or do you guys like know what each other's thing is and like then just give them permission to go do that thing?
Yeah, 100%. Mikey's is like, he does a so Mikey doesn't like very, very rarely gets tilted. You will usually be something like super frustrating, usually completely out of our control, like a really dodgy ref decision, or which do happen. Like it's, crazy chaotic game. Like refs can make wrong decisions sometimes. Or maybe a decision they didn't make, like they completely missed some blatant cheating, or the base like lagged out or something and we got denied when normally we would have got it. It's usually for Mikey, it's things like completely out of his control. And yeah, he'll have like he does one of these ones and then he'll just like walk outside. He'll like walk like 50 meters away and then he'll come back in. And then usually he's chill. I'm the same as well. Like I'll just like remove myself from the whole situation. I might go like sit by myself for a second, just kind of like, wait, maybe this is not a good time to have a team chat. Like I'm just going to start like screaming because I'm super upset about whatever happened. I'm definitely remove myself. Honestly, the rest of the guys are pretty chill. They're able to, it's mainly Mikey and I that we're the storming off for 50 seconds and coming back chill kind of guys. The rest of them are usually pretty, they're good. They're good for it. They're able to just like, kind of keep that chill.
Yeah.
And then obviously, and then like you go and have your team talk, and then let's say, someone blatantly cheated in front of you, or whatever. We usually have like a little bit of time at the start just to like vent of like the really frustrating things that happened that game, and then usually it'll be Beefy that checks in and he goes like, "All right, guys, we got like 10 minutes. We need to actually talk about the game." It's like, okay.
Yeah.
And then
I was gonna mention that. That's one of the things that I notice a lot is like, for me is like I really don't like it is like talking way too much about the thing that happened in the previous game that's completely not relevant to the game that's coming up. Oh no, it's just such an unproductive thing. Like, yeah, cool. There's time when you go home and have a drink and kick back and watch the stream where you can talk about all those things, but directly after a game when you've got like limited turnaround time, it's like, no, move on, guys. Let's go. Let's keep moving forward. Like, if it's important for the next game, cool. But if it's not important for the next game, even if it's a good thing that happened, like if you're gloating about some crazy thing that you did or whatever, like let's save it. Let's save it for later. All right, let's go.
No, we usually have like a few minutes of like gloating venting period after a game, but then Beefy's very good for like, all right, let's talk about the next game. He's very good for that.
Yeah.
But I think it is good to, whether you having some kind of an outlet for that, whether it is like we do where it's like a few minutes like during the team chat and then straight onto like the proper stuff, or you just like hold everything in and just wait till afterwards. Wait till we get home. Because also it looks really bad. It looks really bad if you blow up in front of let's say you like you start blowing up in the foyer, like really loudly complaining about a specific player and a specific thing that happened in the foyer, and everyone's looking at you like, okay, this guy just looks like an absolute knob. So saving that for an environment where it is just your team, whether it's at home or you just find your space or whatever. Not doing it in front of people is really important, I think.
That's kind of
and the gloating bit as well. Like, I think there's room for like boosting up people's egos, especially if you have people on the team that like maybe. God knows I don't need it, but like, let's say Jesse on my team, he's like a super like really polite. Like, he would never be like, "Oh yeah, I totally destroyed that guy this game." He would never say that himself. But if we really want to pump someone up, saving that for not when the people that we just beat are like right next to us, because I think that's just a bit disrespectful as well. Like, give them the respect of like, they're obviously feeling really crap about losing that game. Like, let's not do them to the service of like rubbing it in front of their face, even if like that's not the objective. You're just trying to G up your teammate, but like, let them lick their wounds and go over that way first, and then you can talk about it.
Oh yeah, nobody loves like beating a team more than the ones that like gloat really hard about their win. Like,
Yeah.
if you're faced with a situation in a game where like you're kind of in control of the game and you can kind of throw second to one team or the other, you are always going to pick the most humble team to throw the second to. But I would anyway, and I think most teams would like always throw in the ditch the team that's a little bit cocky, essentially.
100%.
So I'm like, 3-team game, guys. You would definitely want to have friends in there for sure. Yeah. And the reason I brought up the thing about do you have like a thing that you guys invite each other to do to like blow off steam is because I think if you don't do that, like if a player holds onto that and carries it into the next game, it's totally going to impact their game. Or like what you said, even worse, they blow up in the foyer or something like that. I think if you have a conversation where you're like, oh, what's your thing? If you get really triggered, like what do you do? And then everybody knows about it. It might be like storming around the block and smoking a cigarette or something. I don't know, it could be different for every player, but it kind of like it brings it into the space what their thing is. So like if somebody comes out really like frustrated and angry, you can say, oh, why don't you just go do your thing? It's an outlet that like halts the bad thing from happening, essentially. And then they can clear it, because you need to get that energy out, and then they can clear it, and then they go into the next game back to normal again. Okay, and everything's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's way too easy for tilt to snowball, and I think the big way that tilt snowballs is just like not having a thing you do to really release that energy in a more positive way, for sure.
Yeah. Cool. And in terms of team talks, mate, like have you got any other kind of philosophies around team talking?
So I think the big thing for me is first and foremost addressing any like fundamental like execution based problems. So whether that's a case of like we were trying to set up this pin and it just like was not working on this door, like are we gonna have to do this on the other door? Do we have to do it in a different way or whatever? And then we're like, something that's a little bit more micro, right? Do all of your micro stuff first, and then afterwards, I've just had this bloody attached to my finger. Put that down. Talk about all the micro stuff first. Like I think we really need a comp for this spot because like they took from there and I had no idea what to call it. If you stand in this spot here on the door, like it makes it really, really hard for them to approach without having to, make themselves visible to the last line order. All the micro stuff first, and then talk about the macro strategy of like, okay, like in terms of our grand scheme of things, how we executed as a team, what are the things strategically we need to do different? Because I think way too often teams put too much emphasis on the macro and they don't address the micro. And then like the underlying problem is usually, for the most part, micro, like the fundamental stuff. Obviously, there'll be cases where a team, like you versus a team, and they have a really good strategy from that base. And you're like, we really need a way to deal with that. And we should probably like try and replicate it as well. Like see how we go with it, see if we can make it better. That's definitely super important. But, it's if you're thinking too much about the strategy when like you dropped like 8 bases, the problem isn't the strategy so much as like we dropped 8 bases. How are we going to not drop 8 bases again? Because you could do the perfect strategy, but if you drop 8 bases and you don't get many bases, like doesn't matter. Like I said before, the execution of things is like should be the priority, I think.
Yeah, I think another thing just to add to that, totally agree with all that. And another thing I'd like to add is I feel like throughout the course of a tournament, the nature of the team talks changes. So early in a tournament, you're talking a lot more about micro, and then towards the end of the tournament, when a lot of micro stuff is worked out, you're kind of focusing on macro. But at all stages, like what we were talking about earlier when training new players, I think the quantity of how much content you put in the team talk is really important, because I feel like, particularly at the highest level, like getting into a really high flow state. So you look at like the guys that are really at the top of their game. They're not thinking about all those micro moves they're doing. They are just so well trained and drilled and are in their flow with what they're doing. Their brilliance emerges, essentially. And I think that's following on from our discussion last week about the future of the meta, the future of the game. I think that's going to become increasingly a part of it. And I think the amount of stuff you put between somebody's ears before a game impacts their ability to reach that flow state. So if you're drilling into lots and lots and lots, this mistake and that mistake and this mistake and that mistake, and how we're going to improve this, and you're getting into lots and lots and lots of details before every game, or making the strategy way too complicated. Like, oh, when you move to here, I'm going to move to there, and then they're going to move to there, and this is going to happen. Like, you need to find a way to reel it back in and actually explain things in a way which is simple enough that they can stay in that heightened state of flow in their game, but complex enough to be able to add the level of detail to your play that's required to win, essentially. And that, I think, is an art form when doing team talks as well. So
100%. No, I don't. I know Aftershock has fallen into the trap pretty much every single tournament we go to, where usually in the round robin to Cascade 1 period, we'll like have some like massive big brain, bloody galaxy brain ideas. And then it comes to executing it. And like you said, like there's so many things that everyone on the team is thinking about that no one is actually playing at their A game. And it's like, even if what we were trying to implement is galaxy brain and would win every single game 100% guaranteed, if the players on the team aren't able to reach their like optimal, play, they're thinking about too many things and they're just losing every duel, it doesn't matter. There's definitely a balancing act there. But like you said before, earlier on, the focus should be micro, because once you have the micro stuff sorted and it's so ingrained that you don't have to think about it, then you can start opening the galaxy brain. Then people aren't thinking about the micro and the macro. They can just solely focus on the macro stuff.
Yeah, I remember when when Maroons were at the peak of their powers, our team talks towards the end of a tournament were a minute. Like we would get in there and we would essentially do a team talk for routine, just to make sure that at the start of the game, every single one of us was switched on to exactly what we were doing. So we would do a team talk 5 minutes before the game. We would go, okay, just to recap, you're here, you're here, you're here, you're doing this, you're doing this. Okay, this is how we're going to play it. If this happens, we'll do this. That's it. We already know what our contingencies are if somebody dumps. We already know, like by that stage of the tournament, you should have all those things happen or already worked out. You know where everybody's standing in a dump situation at every base. If you have to dump, you know where you're going to be standing. So you shouldn't be figuring those details out towards the end of the tournament. And then 30 seconds before a game or a minute or two before a game, we would gather. And then we would just quickly recap, a 30-second recap one more time. And that was a routine we just repeated, even though it was repeating information we already knew. It was a routine that worked. Like we always, as soon as the game started, was switched on straight away. And if we broke the routine, occasionally one of the five of us would like maybe do something like we would just forget what we were doing momentarily at the start of the game and maybe not get to that spot quick enough or something like that. So that routine, I felt really, really worked for us. But yeah, it was simple. Keep it simple. Towards the end of a tournament, the simpler the better. Like, I mean, you shouldn't. I would doubt. The best teams are really getting super complex with their team talks in finals and System B games, or Golden games, I should say. Most of the detailed stuff happens during round robin and Cascade 1 and Cascade 2, really.
Yeah, and I think we'll probably wrap up soon. It has been an hour and a half already, but to continue on from that a little bit, I think a big thing that you kind of alluded to before was everyone on the team understanding what the team is doing during the game and why. So not just understanding your own position, right? It is very easy to just go like, oh, I'm just the last line. I don't have to think about this stuff, and then just like tune out, whatever. But I think the whole team really understanding how you're doing things as a team in the game strategically makes it it's part of what makes a team really feel like a team. You know, it's not just like the defenders over there, the attackers over there, and the mid is kind of doing something over there. It's like you understand why everything is happening no matter where you are in the game. Like if you're attacking and your mid has come out, you were like, oh, like we must not be getting attacked right now, or we're being attacked by people we don't care about. Cool. You know, if your mid's not coming out to help you, you'd be like, man, we must be getting attacked a lot. You know, understanding kind of, yeah, just be, it really helps the team get a sense of where you're at during the game as well. Like whether to know, like, are we winning this game? Are we not winning this game? Do I have to like really try and like kick it up a gear right now? Or am I going to have to start like making some risky plays to try and catch up because I know we're losing right now? And then also, especially if you're a team that actually like swaps the positions of like during the game, like you have an opening positionings of players, but then as things progress, like the positionings change. If not everyone is aware of like what all the roles are on the team and why they exist and like what their purpose is and what it looks like when it's happening, then like, you know, you might be really good in your opening position, but then as soon as you end up in like this other position, you're just like, man, I really wish I paid a bit more attention to the team talks when he was talking about how he was playing this position. So yeah, that's been a big thing on Aftershock since probably like Hobart, I guess. I think Hobart, we had a really good finger on the pulse for the whole team in terms of that. And it's what we're doing with current Aftershock now is everyone knows what each of the roles are and why they exist and what it looks like and stuff. So
yeah, I think that's so important. Like we mentioned responsibility before. For me, like if I was to form my ideal team, like having people that all take responsibility for learning every role. Like it shouldn't be my job as the team leader or captain to make sure that everybody on the team knows how to do every role and play every position. Like everybody needs to be self-responsible. Like particularly these days, I think that's where the game's going. 5 players who can all think, who are all dynamic, who all understand every role on the team and can play to some degree every role on the team.
You don't have to be perfect in every role.
No, I don't have to be perfect in every role, but maybe you won't have everybody knowing how to gain control or you know. But you know, all the other positions, the float positions, the door defenders, even the last line position, everybody should have some kind of understanding of how to do those roles. So yeah, but mate, I'm squeezed like a sponge right now. I think you've got everything I know about team talks and things out of me for the night.
Me too. I've rambled more than enough. Yeah. I've gone on tangent and a half a few times there. So I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up. Have you got any final words or things, or are we just going to sign off right now?
All I would like to say is I know Prenats 3 is coming up. I won't be there, and I've got incredible FOMO, and everybody just put on an awesome show for me, and for the rest of us that won't be there, and for everybody that'll be standing in the foyer at the event as well. But yeah, have an awesome time, put on a great show for us all, and yeah, it's a great arena, and I can't wait to see everybody now with 1 year of H2 experience under their belt, how things look.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm going to announce right now, I forgot to put it in my calendar, but I'm pretty sure that I'm pretty damn confident. The Prenats 3 prediction stream is going to be on the 9th of March. It'll be at the usual time, like 7:30 p.m. kind of thing. So it's on a Saturday. This one's going to be featuring myself, Firebird, Wax, and Runt. And we're going to be doing a slightly different format. It may turn into 2 streams because I'm not going to give anything away, but the likelihood of this going off the rails and like taking way more time than we expect is likely, especially with there being 22 teams. So very, very possible to be split into 2 streams, but that's why I've done it like on the 9th of March. So we still have another 2 weekends after that to organize like a stream to get through all of the teams. But yeah, stay tuned. 9th of March is the first one. And it's going to be it's going to be a kind of chaotic stream. But yeah, I'm super excited for it, and that's all I'll say. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. That joined us live. If you're watching this on YouTube afterwards, like and subscribe and comment and do all of those fun and lovely things. Because yeah, it's cool and fun and nice if you do that. But anyway, I've been talking too much, so we're going to call it there. See you, Bootza. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Holmes. Thank you for hosting, and it's been a pleasure hanging out with you and everybody that was on the chat.
Easy. Have a good one.
All right.
Boom.
Peace.